Nothing? Okay. Before I call the hearing to order, I want to address the attorneys on the, for the court reporter's sake, about not speaking over one another. And I'm going to take it a little further and say that I would like you to pause for 1 second after you're done speaking to allow the other attorney or other person to begin speaking so that we don't have a problem with our transcript. Was there anything else from the board?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, and the board expects everybody to behave in a professional manner this evening. And if at any time we see that any individual is not behaving professionally, I'm going to bring it to their attention immediately. Okay, you ready? Okay, hearing will come to order. This is the March 14th, 2011 hearing for the continuation of the Laurel Mountain Midstream Operating LLC's request for final approval for subdivision and land development at the Robin Hill Dew Point Patrol Facility. Would you take roll call, please?
Sure. Chairman, Mr. Coppola.
Here.
Vice Chairman, Mr. Dicer.
Here.
Supervisor, Mr. Lucchino.
Here.
Township Manager, Zoning Officer, Mrs. Rummel. Here. Solicitor, Mr. John Smith. Sorry.
Okay. Not too often that name gets butchered. That's good. Here.
Secretary, Treasurer, Mrs. Battis here. And we also have our engineer from Leonard Smith and Solon, Daniel Martin.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment this evening that was not sworn in during the hearing last month? Okay, would you please rise, raise your right hand, and I'm going to have the court reporter swear you in.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And then everyone else that was previously sworn in was already sworn.
Okay, well, let's see, we're going to go through the...
Well, just as housekeeping, Mr. Chairman, at the last hearing we received, Sean, how many exhibits were there?
58.
50, all were admitted into the record. I think you completed that task, correct? Okay. I just wanted to make sure 30 days in between hearings. But, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make sure that this evidence was already submitted into the record. And I'm not sure where we are in terms of the status of the hearing. So,
Okay, well, I think we need to get to the actual application, what was submitted, and the deficiencies that our engineer has outlined. And as we go through the deficiencies, I'm sure your engineer will want to address them. Wherever we come across one of the deficiencies where you're requesting a waiver, we'll stop, make your request, get it on the record, and then we'll proceed.
If I may, just I could speed things up. I have 4 exhibits. I would just like to supplement what I added. One is marked Exhibit 59. This is a letter from me to Ms. Rummel for right-to-know request, requesting documents related to the Atlas development, among other things. That was made just a couple days after the last hearing. Exhibit 60 is a response letter dated February 23rd from Ms. Rummel.
Sean, this is the original. Who's taking the original, Tim or you? Okay.
We were hoping to have these plans before this hearing, but yeah,
Now, Have you filed an appeal based on 59 or 60, Sean?
No, I haven't yet. No.
Is it,
The appeal, well, the date hasn't run.
so that's still timely? They're within the time period to respond?
Yes,
The township, that is.
correct.
Okay. And Christine, you're the records officer for the
Yes.
township?
Exhibit 61 is settlement agreement dated March 19th between Laurel Mountain Midstream Operating and the township. And Exhibit 62 is a May 7th, 2009, or May 12th, 2009 notice of violation to Atlas America. This was, I think, Appendix A to the settlement agreement, but I pre-marked it as Exhibit 62. Then just a point of clarification, I understand when we were here last meeting, we went through a lot of exhibits, and at the conclusion, it was my understanding, it was our understanding at least,
Sean, I'm sorry. The question raised by Supervisor Lupino, there's 56 in this binder. There must have been two loose.
57, Exhibit 57 was a two-page loose leaf. It wasn't bound. It was a summary of 5 deemed approvals of our subdivision land development plans.
I have that.
You have it?
I think.
And then Exhibit 58 was an affidavit from Scott Coney.
Okay, all right. I just was, sorry.
But it was my understanding that we were not going through comment by comment, but the specific waiver requests.
Well, how are you gonna address the deficiencies in what you submitted?
Well, we submitted, I believe, exhibits 43 from the last hearing, which was a November 29 response letter to one of the Len Smith comment letters. Exhibit 46 was 12 specific waiver requests. And Exhibit 49, December 21, 2010, was a letter that basically stated, because all these comments were raised for the first time after the 7-month process, there was no way that we possibly could have known that these would be perceived deficiencies, so we needed to deal with these 12 specific waiver requests before addressing anything else.
So you're basically asking to deal with those waiver requests first, then you want a time extension to address the others.
Well, I think that's what we concluded with at the last hearing. At least that was my understanding.
I mean,
That's fine, but I have no
Yeah.
objection to that.
Yeah.
You? Okay. Just for the record, the variance approval, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but under the variance, of course, you are required to obtain subdivision land development approvals. In addition to that, number 9, variance scope, there shall be no expansion of the use, facility, or principal structure on the subject property unless the applicant applies for and obtains amended variance approval. So before we move ahead, I just want to be clear that this board will not consider anything that was not in place at the time of the variance.
Okay. Well, since you just read from that, I mean, could we just go ahead and make the,
That's number 9 that I read.
you want to make that an exhibit?
yeah.
But I think that was that already entered?
I haven't received the record yet, so I'm
I
not-
thought
I
in
don't
your
remember.
binder that you gave us.
We didn't include it originally as a,
I don't believe it's in the exhibits because
Okay.
we submitted something. I can't remember what exhibit. Was it that one?
I brought everything in. I dropped everything
Okay.
off,
Well,
so-
you know what? For sake of clarity for tonight, whatever the next number is from the township standpoint, let's just number it. Or do you want it under yours, Sean? I don't
yeah, I mean, I have
You have a
copies of
copy?
it. We'll make it Exhibit 63.
Okay.
Okay.
And
And that's the Robinson Township variance opinion, is it, Brian?
It's March 16.
Sorry, March 18?
What I have is a March 16 letter from Harlan that encloses the findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Okay. Harlan being the zoning solicitor for Robinson Township. Okay.
So this would be 63 is the variance. Everybody has a copy of that, right? Yes. And then, all right, we just make the December 24, 2007 conditional use approval for Atlas Exhibit number 64.
I think that's the one that may be in already, but nonetheless, let's mark that again if we need to, because that's what I read off of last time.
What's the date on that?
December 24, 2007.
Would it be in the book already, John?
It's not in their book, it should be in the exhibits.
Oh.
We read, I want to say it's paragraph 12 that we run into, it dealt with the compressor station, or a compressor.
Okay. Okay, and I just want to be clear that I've got a copy of a February 16, 2011 letter from the Township Zoning Officer, Christine Rummel, to Mr. Gallagher, acknowledging that the Board of Supervisors granted your request to table this until this evening, and asking you to provide any updated plans or comments from your civil engineer, but we're not going to do that this evening. We're just going to go to the waiver request, correct?
Well, we did provide an updated plan on December 3rd, 2010, and we Exhibit 43. Exhibit 43 was a November 29, 2010 response letter to one of the initial Lennon Smith solar array comment letters, which we have not had any reply from Lennon Smith or the township.
Okay.
So,
And also the application, required application fee, has that been paid yet?
well, if you look at exhibit number, well, first, I mean, we have 5 different deemed approvals, but to the extent we're going on application number 6, and the application
Well,
fee.
did you pay any of the application
Well, yeah,
fees?
well, yes, that would go back to Exhibit 61, which is the settlement agreement with the township. There's a settlement sum by April 15th, 2010. Laurel Mountain was to pay the township $100,000. In 2011, they were to pay $50,000, and every year thereafter, beginning in 2012, pay the township $25,000. And the purpose of those payments is to include fees and inspections dealing with facility that's issued here. So
have they paid the fee on
Yes.
February 15th of 2011?
I don't know if I can't speak to that, but I know that they paid $100,000.
Are they current with that agreement?
I can't testify to that.
Mrs. Rummel, have they paid the February 15th, 2011 payment, $50,000?
No.
Sean, you're still the applicant at this hearing. You indicated, I believe it's item 43 is what you're resting on in terms of...
No, I'm not resting on anything.
I mean, submitting in terms of this is your response to...
It was an initial response.
Okay.
We received no comments back.
We have a Lennon Smith rep here. Do you want to have the opportunity to have him address your waiver request?
I think we could just keep this to the waiver request.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Chairman, at least initially, do you want... Lennon Smith is obviously... they do this for how many municipalities? I mean,
50.
50 municipalities. So, do you have a copy of the waiver request?
Yes.
And, Mr. Chairman, is it okay just to kind of move things along at the request of the applicant to go through the waiver request? And, Sean, I know you have, I believe, an engineer here, and I know Kelsey's an engineer as well, and she's here. So if you want to have a give and take, let's at least try to do that instead of reading through the whole list relative to why this should be waived or why not, if that's fair. And obviously our engineer can't make that call, but we're asking him to at least digest the information to advise the board.
Fair enough. Well, we were under the stand, I mean, when we left, there were certain waivers that you thought were appropriate, so I didn't know if,
I know
just
that-
to cut down, I mean, if you've already
Sign
reviewed
that,
them and
Brian?
there's,
Well, let's go through them quickly, but I think what the board is going to want to know is what's particular to this piece of property that requires you to request a waiver. So as you go through, we're going to want specifics on something that's out of the ordinary, say, compared to another piece of property. Because typically when somebody comes in and requests a waiver, that's the basis for it. There's some sort of a hardship. Well, this property's on the side of a mountain, we can't put a detention pond on. So those are the things that we're looking for in a waiver request. What is peculiar, unusual about this piece of property as opposed to a piece of property across the street? So as we go through, just keep that in mind.
understood. I think one common theme, though, that it's important to keep in mind, and I'm not testifying to this, but just with the intention of speeding things along. I mean, this is an already constructed facility, and as Exhibit 58 stated, it was a facility that already got zoning and land development approval at the time of construction. So, that's a common theme throughout our waivers. But how do you want to start it with?
We're going to start.
Brett,
We're going to start at number one, and I'd like your engineer to go ahead and give us an explanation of why the waiver is necessary.
Well, one
What's your
thing,
name first for the records?
Chris Brown.
Sean, excuse me, do you have a submission of waiver requests?
It's
Is it already numbered in the packet?
it's Exhibit 46.
46.
I have extra copies of that.
It's in your book.
It's in the book, 46. Okay. That's what we want.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things is we'll go through these one by one. We can do it that way, but like you said, what is unique about this property? And if we go through these one by one, you'll see a recurring theme that is the basis of why Royal Mountain Midstream is requesting the waiver. So, just a suggestion, do you want us to maybe zoom out a little bit and approach this with the, to answer your question, what is unique about the property? And I think it boils down to maybe 2 or 3 things that really sum up the basis for these individual waivers. It's just a suggestion. Would you want to do that? And then we go through one by one, or
Why don't we do the big ones?
the big ones?
And what I'm going to have, because we've already done this, 2 Lennon Smith solar array representatives, the zoning officer, and 2 of your previous engineers sat down with me and them and spent 2 hours. We went through the whole thing and pretty much outlined things that the township probably could waive, and then there are other things that we can't waive. So the stormwater management ordinance is a big one.
Okay.
And I think that our engineer that had explained it before, but just keep in mind that the stormwater management ordinance is not just about your site. They're really designed to protect all the surrounding sites and future development. So I'm going to ask our engineer just to address that briefly on what the ordinance is designed to do.
Well,
Give us your name first.
Daniel Larkin. To begin with, the fact that you changed the character of the site from a previously wooded and grass character to what is now gravel changes the runoff characteristics of the site. So it can't be said that you're not increasing runoff from the site when you change the character of the site. And the concern, as Brian was alluding to, is not just with what happens to the downstream property, which may not have anyone close by with any homes that would even notice any increase in runoff, but you're trying to plan for with this type of ordinance, you're trying to plan for the future that someone may build a house on that next downstream property or some other facility. And if you've increased the runoff there and you're not getting complaints now, down the road, that could create an issue. And the reality is that the ordinance is designed to prevent you from increasing runoff from your site, whether or not there's complaints.
Well, I don't think, and I can't speak for Laurel Mountain, they didn't want to do any stormwater management. It was to do the stormwater designs based on a 2-year storm versus, say, the 100-year storm. And this kind of coincides, you're right, gravel will increase. There was some deforestation with the right-of-ways and stuff like that. That would increase the runoff. But this kind of ties into some of the other waivers. And my opinion is the best way to manage a stormwater issue is not to create one. And the more surface disturbance you have, the more likelihood there is for sedimentation, erosion and sedimentation. And the more impervious area that is created, the more runoff and more concentrated that runoff will be. So, for example, if there is a paved road, there is curb and gutter, there are sidewalks, there's going to be increased runoff and more concentrated runoff, which creates, then again, a greater stormwater issue. For example, if the right-of-way is widened to 50 feet, which is one of the waivers addresses that, you're creating more surface disturbance, which creates more of a stormwater issue. It's a small site. Just the fact of trying to impound that or contain that or create the infrastructure to manage that size of a storm event will create a erosion and sedimentation issue because of the surface disturbance. And stepping back, it looks like it's a solution in search of a problem. Now, there does need to be some erosion and sedimentation controls, but and I think Laurel Mountain's implementing those. For example, there's silt fence out there, and there's those types of things. And for example, with the road, that would need to be crowned and ditched, and some sediment traps associated with that gravel road. But to make that leap to protect for the 100-year storm event seemed a little excessive.
Sir,
Yes.
first I'd like you to address the board.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And what was your name again?
Chris.
Chris Brown. The argument that you're making, if everyone came in here and made the same argument, you would have nothing in this township paved. Everyone that came in and wanted to put a gas station, a convenience store, any type of commercial structure, nothing would be paved. I mean, we would have stone in every lot, swales, and I mean, the whole idea behind the land development ordinance is for the orderly development of land, and that includes paving of roads, parking areas, and a byproduct of that, of course, is water. And the argument is, you think it's better, but 10 years from now, if the property owners that are around that site decide they're going to come and they're going to sell off 2-acre parcels, well, there's no longer woods around here then. Or if your client decides that he wants to come back here in a couple of years and do something else up there, that leaves us in a bad position because we've already granted a waiver to the stormwater management ordinance. Down the road, 5-10 years down the road, that could create problems for the surrounding property owners.
Right, understood. And my point was a gas station or a shopping center, the pavement is to facilitate the activity of what's going on in that subdivision or that site. And then you would do the water management per what is necessary for the activity that's going to be on that site. And I think Laurel Mountain, what they're trying to say is, the paving is not necessary. And to tie back to the stormwater, paving will actually make the stormwater management a greater issue. So, I understand your point, but I felt you're kind of shifting around my logic. One wasn't necessarily.
No, I guess what I'm saying is anybody that did any type of commercial development whatsoever can almost come in and make the same argument.
Well,
they could come in and say, for instance, let me give you a very simple example. Storage buildings. People were empty storage lockers. Somebody came in and they said, we want to put up 50 storage lockers, but we want a waiver from the stormwater management ordinance, and we want a waiver from the paving requirements because, well, there's hardly nobody that ever goes there. People might go there once a year. There's no traffic. It would be less water. So therefore, we feel that it would be in everybody's best interest to waive part of the ordinance. It's kind of the same argument.
Can I ask a question?
Well, I just want to make sure that there has to be something unique about the site that's different from other sites. When somebody requests a waiver, there has to be some unique reason that it's different from any other site in the township. I guess that's the reason that boards and supervisors grant waivers. Now, we're considering your waiver request. I want you to understand it. It's just that, I want to get as much feedback as possible on why you're making a request.
And in your experience, Chris, is the 100-year storm event, is that more suited towards a big subdivision or a big box type development?
Well, yes, I think what would be unique about that facility, I spent almost 40 hours out there overseeing the slope stability of it. And really there has been some development, but for, in the case of the development we're talking about or what the ordinances, in my opinion, are geared to, it's not the same type of development, which makes it unique. It's in a very rural setting. It's not open to the public. There's not going to be a large amount of parking, pedestrian traffic, where there's not going to be sidewalks. There's not a lot of impervious area that's created, such as with the Walmart, where you have a large building, a large parking lot, large capture and discharge of concentrated runoff.
Well, Chris, what about the comment that Dan made about the potential, it's a residential area, about the potential
Right.
development of the neighboring properties?
Right.
I understand your issue about this particular site is not like a Walmart, but what if the people that move in next door, will they be affected when you don't control stormwater management?
No, I don't see anything out there that's in as development, as the property is developed now, that anything that would hinder or hurt or create any stormwater issues for surrounding areas. There wasn't,
Okay, I'm sorry.
to play devil's advocate, for example, the probably biggest potential is the access for the gravel. With proper management, with crown and ditching and sedimentation traps, there are ways to manage for that with culverts.
Is that in place at the site now?
I believe it's crown and ditch, but I haven't been out to the site in a while.
Can I just say that I feel like you're addressing different issues outside of the issue of stormwater management. You keep talking about erosion. Yes, erosion and sedimentation control is important on the site, as it is on any construction site.
Right.
The stormwater management ordinance isn't specific to erosion. It's talking about the rate of runoff from your site, not specifically for erosion purposes. So I just want to be clear about that.
Sure.
Also, I feel like talking about the road paving is, while it's tied in, is separate from whether the township should consider waiving, the stormwater management ordinance.
Well,
It's a separate waiver.
In our waiver request, there is a proposed alternate standard for a 2-year, 24-hour storm event.
Okay, is there any other questions from the board on number one?
I had one other question. Just, you mentioned, Chris, and I know we've had some issues with the stability of the site. Does the stormwater management take into effect the runoff, how that will affect the stability of the site in question?
With regards to the slope, no. There should be no, if I understand you correctly.
Well, I know when you add water to a slope,
Right.
it could be a problem, and I know I believe you've had.
That should already be,
No, it's okay. You can finish your
this should
thought.
already be addressed with the slope stability that's already been in place, with the armoring of that slope with the riprap. And I'd like to comment on the stormwater. You're right, but I'm being asked a question on, well, how will it affect another landowner? And usually, the problems created with stormwater is erosion and sedimentation. So I'm trying to stay away from the vagaries and trying to maybe pinpoint exact issues. And I would rather answer a specific question, like in the site, is there any specific problems that the township sees within neighboring properties? Is there something at the development at Laurel Mountain that you see as a potential threat to nearby properties? And if that's a specific issue, then we can address it specifically. But being asked, do you see anything? Well, of course, we don't see that being an issue. I'm sure if if Williams or Laurel Mountain saw that as being an issue now, they would address that. So,
Dan, do you want to address that? I mean, are there any problems that you would foresee? I know you already talked about potential problems with additional runoff to neighboring properties.
Well, I think it's kind of what Brian was alluding to as well. When you have an aggregate, if you have a precedent of granting this kind of stormwater management waiver, and then this continues to happen at other sites, and the problem is you get in a big watershed with a bunch of places that have had this waiver granted, and you do get more than a 2-year storm, that you have a bunch of sites then that have no stormwater management for that kind of a bigger event. So that's,
what would, either one of you, what would stormwater management entail at this site? How can it be done?
see, I don't think Laurel Mountain or Williams wants to do away with any stormwater management. They want to manage the stormwater, and I think we agree that stormwater management needs to be addressed.
Has it been addressed at the site currently, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, it's a Crown Ditch Road. There was BMPs in place for sediment erosion. Again, that's not stormwater, but I kind of lump that all together. It's like an environmental protection.
Dan, can you ask the questions?
well, yeah. Is there detention on the site currently?
No.
Okay. Because even the proposed alternate would require some kind of detention facility, however that may look. Right? Because you're proposing basically detaining the 2-year storm events so that there would be no increase in pre and post.
So to put it in specifics, so the runoff being shed by the access road, you'd want that.
Well, if that's what, yeah.
If that's where, I'm trying to think specifics and getting down to the nuts and bolts on this from an engineering solution. And with the site in mind, that's really the only place I really see those where there'd be concentrated runoff, maybe downstream on the.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Sure.
Okay, the time is 8:43, and we're going to take 5 minutes.
How's those little girls doing? How's those little girls doing?
Door handle on the women's room. The poor lady gets stuck in the bathroom. Trying to get the hell out. There's a lot of people in there.
She runs the whole state.
I was able to do that last year. It was like all the teaching.
No, I'm good. No, I'm good. I just asked you. Because I think what it is that we do. I gotta think
I need a cushion. I should have brought a pillow.
Yeah, I would say some trade there.
Can you stand up there? You want a chair over there for
There's not really room to sit down. Oh, that's all right. Yeah, that's all right. Thank you.
Busy this past week. Last week I worked exactly 3 weeks in a row.
November, December, and January. Morgantown all day long. Yeah. He likes it. That's an experience. It's really scary. So I think it's going to be that shit down or something like pilots. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Still Fort Cherry?
What's that?
You still Fort Cherry?
Yeah.
How's this thing with the governor going to hurt the school district?
Oh,
Because you know what he wants to do, don't you?
I know.
He wants all you guys to take it. He's talking politics. He says,
Okay.
raise your own taxes.
That's what he wants.
hearing is reconvened at 8:50, and I think Mr. Brown was talking about the stormwater management. And were there any questions from the board regarding the stormwater management ordinance? Mr. Brown, I had a question on this ENS while we're talking about water. Could you come up and point some things out to the board, please? And this was done by Kleinfelder. That's who you work for, Kleinfelder?
Yes, that was done before. I think I joined them, but I'll answer it as best I can.
This was dated March 25th, 2010. Is this the original contour lines? I'm pointing to the eastern part of the site on Kleinfelder's ENS control plan. Were these the original contour lines?
I would think it would have to be, yes.
When was this portion graded?
I can't testify to that. I don't know.
And Ms. Van Hoos, could you
That
tell us?
was, I'm going to be honest with you, that was prepared for us by a consulting company. I'd have to go back and check the records when they did their surveying.
Would this be an accurate ENS plan in March 2010? If you don't know, I mean.
No, I don't.
Okay.
This was submitted, you're
This
referring
is part
to
of what they submitted, that's why I was asking about it.
I think speak on behalf of Kleinfelder, we received information from other engineering parties, and specifically you're asking, is that the original contours, or when the grading or when the fill was in place?
Yeah, as of March of 2010. I wanted to know if this plan was accurate as of March.
The best answer I could give you is whenever it was constructed. And I believe that was before March that facility was constructed.
No, not the facility, the hillside that you were out on the site, I remember taking
Right.
the engineers out.
Right. For the slope stability or for the fill?
The fill.
I do not.
You don't know. Okay. Okay, number 2, the ordinance requires a plan of proposed domestic water distribution system. Of course, we know there's no public water out there. We want to just move on to the next one here. Okay, we're going to go to number 3.
Does that mean that you're granting that waiver?
We're considering it. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. We have a record here.
It's likely that we will grant it, but we want to discuss it further, so.
This is the public hearing too, Sean. They'd have to do that at their meeting, which would be following the hearing.
Well, I understand, but I mean, we need to support our record.
Yeah, if you want to speak on that issue.
I just would, to save time, I don't think you have to, unless you want to just speak about it. I don't think it's necessary. Do the other board members?
No, I don't,
No. I don't see a problem. I mean, we'll just observe briefly.
Yeah, I mean, if
We're
you're
not
going
this
to
hearing.
grant it, then there's no need to go over it.
Okay. Number 3, the ordinance requires a plan of proposed sanitary sewage system. You can address that.
I think that tied back to 2 a little bit, is that it's an unmanned facility.
Is this part of the planning module, or is this a separate, I guess that question will go to our township engineer. Would this be considered part of the planning module, or is this something
Would
separate?
sewers, you mean would the proposed sanitary sewer system be part of the planning module?
Yes, it would be.
Yes.
If the township required them to do a planning module, could the township waive the actual installation of the system, or how would that work?
I'm not sure on that.
Mr. Brown, you see where I'm getting, see where I'm going?
No, I
with
do
that?
not.
We've never had an applicant come in and not do a planning module for a subdivision. I've never even heard of that, unless it's a field with crops in it. But any structure, any use whatsoever, I just have never heard of anybody trying not to do a planning module. Now, that's not to say that the board wouldn't consider waiving any type of actual sewage, a holding tank or something that you would have to put in. If it's an unmanned facility. But as far as a subdivision goes, I mean, our engineer can address it. It is a requirement, isn't it?
Correct.
A state requirement?
Yes.
You guys want to ask a question?
you're saying it's unmanned. But there's a compressor station there. So there's going to be people coming and going in there. How often will they be
Well,
coming?
I'm not saying it's unmanned, Laurel Mountain.
It's an unmanned facility in the fact that there's not someone stationed there 24/7. Like, if you look at our manned facilities, we have operators there all day.
Right.
And since it's not, it runs and we have call-outs, there's like something goes down or something like that, it calls the operator to let them know so they can come out and restart that equipment. But they aren't there all day. They have other sites that they are responsible for checking. They have training in the office or something like that.
So,
They aren't stationed.
Would you say that you're going to have at least somebody come in there and pull maintenance once a week, once a day? I mean, there are. I mean, I understand it's not going to be manned 24/7, and might not even be manned 4 hours. But there is going to be people on that site.
Yeah, there's normally an individual that goes out there probably once, maybe twice a day to check the site, take readings, something like that.
Okay, because once this gets established, it's going to be 25 years that you're going to be there.
I guess I've never heard of anybody trying to do a subdivision without doing a planning.
Let me ask you this, Kelsey. Did you file originally a request for a planning waiver, non-building declaration to Robinson Township?
Yes,
And who instructed you to do this?
John Over.
And who's John Over?
He is the engineer from K2 that was the original township engineer that I was dealing with before Lennon Smith and Solar was brought in.
Okay, so the township engineer instructed you with respect to this requirement to file a planning waiver, non-building declaration to the township.
Correct.
And I'd just like to have the record reflect that the waiver attached to Exhibit
It's attached to this exhibit.
43 is a July 15th email from John Over to Ms. Van Hoos from Laurel Mountain stating that make a note of the fact that the sewage officer, Mr. Wright, instructed you to file the sewage waiver to the township in this manner. And it states, I will accept the waiver in that manner.
Now, Kelsey, did he explain to you that he doesn't have the authority to grant waivers, this board does?
No, I was told to deal directly with him. So anytime I had a question, that's who I called, and he would tell me.
But let me ask you this, Ms. Van Hoos. When you were dealing with Mr. Over, was it your understanding that he was acting on behalf of the township?
Yeah.
Just to be clear for the record, the township engineer only instructed you how to proceed to request a waiver, because only the board of supervisors can grant a waiver. I think we've had this conversation before.
I don't know. He told me he would accept it, so I don't know how you guys operated with him and stuff like that. I just know what he told me.
Well, only the board of supervisors can grant a waiver request, planning module. I've never heard of anybody granting a planning module waiver request for, you can't even do it for a hunting cabin. I mean, you just can't do that. I've never heard of it being done.
Well, this is not manned facility, as they testified.
Dan, you testified earlier your firm represents about 50 municipalities. Have you ever had one request or grant a waiver?
Any of those municipalities? Not in my experience, no. And if we did, it would only be for agricultural sites, where there's no building or development.
Is anybody generating any sewage out there?
You mean like my people? No.
Thank you.
Is anybody on the site generating sewage at all
No.
that is there, allowed to be there?
Are there any porta-johns on the site?
Atlas has porta-johns on their portion of their site.
Is there anything peculiar about this site that you can't do a planning for this site?
It's an unmanned facility, Brian.
The state waiver doesn't recognize
I'll,
that.
if I could just read real quick the instructions for completing this waiver that we're talking about. It says acceptable uses. Examples of acceptable large parcel uses for this form include subdivision of property for agriculture, silviculture, mineral lease, division of farmland to settle estates, where no building or development is proposed, and airport runway extensions.
What are you reading from, Dan?
This is the instructions for completing the request for planning waiver and non-building declaration
From whom?
from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection.
Chris, are you familiar with that?
Yes. I guess it comes back to the requirement of a sewage handling facility when no sewage is going to be generated and it's going to be unmade.
Well, I understand your point, but do you agree with what Dan just read? The DEP doesn't appear to allow us to even waive that.
Those are examples, John. That doesn't mean they don't allow them. I think you understand that. I hope you understand that.
That's not, I mean, that's acceptable uses.
But those are examples of acceptable uses. That's not definitive, and that's not thorough. That's not complete. I hope you understand that. That's what waivers are for. And I'd also like to respond. Yes,
This board is required to follow the law.
I understand that.
Okay, and I'm
This
sure,
board has discretion as
and
well.
I don't want to be interrupted.
Neither do I. You interrupted me when
I
was
do
speaking.
not.
There you do. Again.
Mr.
do
Boss,
the
you're
rules
out of
apply to
order.
you?
You're out of order. I am not going to have a repeat of what I had last month.
Well, then don't interrupt me.
You do
Mr.
not,
Coppola.
you do not address the board in that manner. And I suggest that you spend some time with your counsel, and he can explain to you the proper decorum to have before this board. And what you just did is not proper. As an attorney here representing your company, that is not a proper way to address this board. The Board of Supervisors has a municipality's planning code that we have to abide by. Mr. Gallagher, Section 512.1, modifications. The governing body or the planning agency, if authorized to approve applications within the subdivision and land development ordinance, may grant a modification of the requirements of one or more of the provisions if the literal enforcement will enact undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the land in question. Now, my question is the same. What undue hardship or peculiar condition exists at that site? And the only answer that I keep getting is basically, we don't want to do it.
No, that's not
Tell
true.
me the peculiar condition or hardship at that site.
Okay, I mean, when we started off, peculiar conditions that are common to all of them is that this facility was already granted land development approval by this board under...
This board is not going to consider that.
Well, you can...
That's not
fine.
under a variance.
You-
That's in the past, Mr.
I'm
Gallagher.
trying to answer your question.
Mr.
You're not
Gallagher.
letting me...
Mr. Gallagher, when I'm speaking, you're not.
Well,
When I'm speaking,
when I'm speaking,
Mr.
you're not allowed
Gallagher,
to speak.
Mr. Gallagher, when I'm speaking, you're not.
You asked me a
Mr.
question.
Gallagher,
Are you done speaking?
Mr. Gallagher, you open your mouth again, you're going out the door. I will not warn you again. You open your mouth when I'm speaking again, you're going out that door.
What is this, Russia?
You
Yeah,
keep
you
your mouth
asked me a
shut.
question, and I'm trying to answer.
Mr. Gallagher,
You asked
I want
me
you
a
to
question.
keep your mouth shut.
So let me get this
Mr.
right.
Gallagher, are you
You were done
unable?
talking.
Are you unable to keep your mouth shut for 30 seconds? This board is not here to consider anything that was done in the past. Your client came in, they got a variance. The only thing that we can consider is what was done with the variance and anything that was in place at the time of the variance. I am not going to go back 2 or 3 years and rehash what was done before that variance with you. You want to make that argument, make it somewhere else. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was trying to answer the question before you interrupted me, so I hope that you would at least provide me with the courtesy of finishing my answer to your question. Whether you want to address this or acknowledge it or not, this facility already received land development approval from this township. Now, notwithstanding that, the facility is already built and there are no issues. But what's really peculiar with respect to this is that it is an unmanned facility that's controlled remotely. And as an additional matter, there's already testimony that your township engineer instructed us to apply for a waiver, which we did. That's what we put forth in support of this waiver request. request.
Applying is one thing, us approving it's another. You can apply all you want. Until it gets to us and we say yes or no, it's just a piece of paper which you have shown an ability not to fill out completely a lot of times. But, I mean, I hope you understand that as you are saying, have to say.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, all we can do is build a record and
Yeah.
present our case.
And
You
that's
can
what
either
you're
grant it or
doing, and
deny
I
it.
presented mine. I mean, we say yes or no.
Yeah, Mr. Geller, you keep saying that this was going to be an unmanned, it's going to be remote, but the facts are, it is going to be manned. There's are going to be people there for the next 25 years as long as that facility is operating, as long as there's gas coming out of the wells. And we have a compression station, you have equipment there, going to be maintenance pulled, you know, not 24/7, but there's, so saying it's not going to be manned, I think is misleading, in my opinion.
Well, I think the point that's trying to be made is that there's nobody keeping office hours. It will be visited, and there's a difference between that and being manned. And that's the point. That's why we're requesting the waiver. That's one of the bases for the waiver request, is that when we say unmanned, we mean somebody's going to be visiting it occasionally to make sure.
Okay, you have anything else on number 3?
Nothing.
Okay, let's go on to number 4.